Welcome to the Black Girls Heal podcast, where we talk about changing unavailable relationship patterns, healing unresolved trauma, and building a healthy relationship with first you and then others. Every episode, we will talk about actionable advice that you can apply today to break unhealthy patterns and grow your self-worth. I'm Sheena Tubbs. Let's begin. Hello, ladies, and welcome to the latest episode of Black Girls Heal. I am overjoyed to have you with me today. So today's episode is going to be a continuation of last week's episode. I heard a lot of great feedback that last week's episode was exactly what most of you needed at the time. And in case you didn't have a chance to listen to last week's episode, it was titled Why They're Treating You the Way That They're Treating You. Because a lot of times we can have a lot of confusion about why is this happening? You know, this person that you've connected to, given so much to, everything has been perfect. You never thought that they would treat you the way that they've shown up in other places, thinking that your relationship was different and just confused about why this is happening now. We got into that. So if that sounds like something that you need and you haven't heard that episode, you can go ahead and check that out. So it's the one right before this. And today is going to be a continuation of that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the grieving process, what that looks like when you're grieving that fantasy. So before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about our self-love intensive because we are in full intensive mode. And if you've been following along, that might sound a little interesting to you because the intensive was originally only supposed to start in November. So I have been enrolling so many of y'all into this intensive for us to get started, but the main program wasn't going to start until November because I wanted to do something different with this course. You know, a lot of us will do online programs and courses and we get these e-booklets and we buy these bundles, but nothing is tangible. We don't actually get to hold anything. We don't actually get to use it unless we print it out and, you know, get special paper and get a binder. And how many of us do that, right? And how many of us miss having tangible things that we can actually use, tangible workbooks that we can flip through, access, not be scrunched up on our phone. And then also the other tools that would be really helpful for our healing process. So I was going to accompany, or I am, I'm accompanying our bigger intensive curriculum with some actual tools, tangible tools and things for you to use, along with some special gifts for the ladies who register that's special just for them, depending on what they tell me they are here to work on. So all of that is still happening. And the addition that's happening now is I'm adding extra months at the beginning because I'm really excited to work with all of my women. So I am adding monthly classes to our self-love intensives about different components of building this self-love, on learning how to get out of our head, to working through self-sabotage, to letting go of people and unforgiveness and resentment that is keeping us stuck, so that in November everyone will be as prepared and clear as they can to receive everything that they're going to get in November as well. So we're starting now. So next month, I'm actually, which at the time of recording this is August, is a few days away. But next month, I'm going to be teaching about that self-sabotage, about the different parts of us that self-sabotage, how to identify them and how to take care of it, how to replace the impulses that come with that and treat ourselves with a little bit more grace and compassion, because self-kindness, y'all, is our secret weapon. And I know that's really hard for many of us to do. It sounds like we are giving ourselves a gimme. It sounds like, how can I be nice to myself? And it not just be me enabling myself to be lazy, to procrastinate, to do the wrong thing, to call them back, to cuss them out. And so we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about where that comes from, and you're gonna get insight and tools and support on how to change that pattern now. And every month there will be a new class, there will be new lessons, there'll be new bonus workshops. So I'm really excited to be adding this to our program. If you have not registered yet, now's the chance, because I am still holding on to the deadline that doors will be closing. So you can go to blackgirlsheal.org/self-love to register. Again, this will not be open until November. I will be holding a strict deadline because I'm talking about it almost every episode. So you have plenty of chances to register. And I don't want you to miss that live class if you can, if you're listening to this now. So again, blackgirlsheal.org/self-love. And the link is in the show notes as well. And you can also just find the link on the front page in case you're like, I'm not going to remember that address. Just go to blackgirlsheal.org and click on the menu and you'll see it. So that's it for our intro. Let's get into grieving. So as a recap, one of the things that I said last week, and I'm not sure if I spent a lot of time on it or if I just casually mentioned it and kept moving, but when it comes to us getting clarity about these relationships and understanding why these things are happening in our relationships and why they're acting the way that they are, there's some grief that comes along with it, because we have been holding this image of who this person was, of what our relationship meant, of the power we felt we supposedly had, the influence we felt we supposedly had, the exemption, like I mentioned before, that's that place of specialness and untouchableness that we thought that we had. And so when we actually look at the reality of none of that was actually true, or it was based on some things that were really circumstantial and conditional, that it wasn't true, genuine love in the way that we thought it was. There's a lot of sadness that comes with that, which is why we will hold on so tightly to that fantasy, which is why we will cling to it, because the pain that comes with it is connected to negative beliefs that we have. So I talked about the proof, right? The proof of we are constantly searching the world and our experiences for a validation that our deepest fears about who we are and what we're worth are true. So if I actually believe that this person doesn't love me enough to change their years and years of coping mechanisms to their trauma and to choose to get better, then that must mean that I'm unlovable, right? And of course, I emphasize the fact that this person had a whole life and a whole set of traumas and a whole set of ways that they have kept themselves safe before you. And so they're going to continue to have that after you, but that doesn't stop us from going there, right? If he really loved me, he would stop cheating on me. If she really was there for me, she would tell me the truth, all the things that we tell ourselves. And so the grieving looks like sadness. It looks like heavy disappointment. And it feels like pain that's pretty old. Pain that's about them, but not about them at the same time, right? So if you start to feel that grief, I want you to not run from it. I want you to own it for what it is, to name it for what it is, so that you can actually move on. Now, you may need some help with that. You may need some support with that. But like most things I do in this podcast, I wanted to give you a name for that emotion that you may be trying to avoid. But when I was thinking about this podcast, the main thing I actually wanted to share with you this episode was that the grief can come back. And why does it come back? Well, because you love the person, because that relationship meant a lot to you or means a lot to you. There are people for me now today that I still miss. And I miss the friendship we had. I miss the connection that we have. But I'm also in full reality about who they are. And I know what connecting to them would mean. I know where I am and I know where they are. So I think when it comes to healing, we expect that once we figure something out, or once we master something, or once we understand something about why this thing has hurt us so long and why we've believed the thing that we've believed, and what the impact of the negative thoughts are, and what the positive reframe we need to have, all that stuff, right? Like once we've done that whole healing cycle, we think, okay, check that off our list, move on, now it's over. However, the grief and the sadness about who this person is and what it could mean can come back. And when it comes back, that is not a sign for you to go back to doing what you used to do. This is just a sign that what you wanted it to be is not real and it's making you sad. So this is just a sign for you to lean into those emotions, to feel those emotions, to honor them, and not try to self-medicate by going back to patterns of codependency, to just settling, to trying to make them happy, to taking whatever you can get to keep them close, because you've done that before, right? That doesn't help anything. Now, just knowing not to go back is not enough. That's why we spend so much time talking about this in our recovery school, which is our main coaching program, as you may know. Because it's kind of like, well, what do I do with my hands? It's kind of like if you are a smoker and you're like, okay, someone tells you all the reasons why you shouldn't smoke, and for whatever reason that day, it finally clicks. You're like, you don't want to die early from lung cancer. You want to make sure you're passing on the legacy. You want to treat your body with respect, whatever it might be, right? So you're like, that's it, I'm done with smoking. And you're like, okay, I'm going to stop. And stopping cold turkey without changing your mindset about it fully and all the reasons why you were triggered to smoke, giving your body something else to do instead of reflexively going for a smoke, changing your lifestyle around it, learning what to do now that you have all this extra time instead of smoking. Like it really is a huge transition. It's not as easy as just stopping. Just like with this, it's not as easy as just, okay, I'm just going to stop missing them. I'm just going to stop feeling sad. I'm just going to stop fantasizing. I'm just going to stop calling them back. It's like you need something to do with your hands. You need to know, what does this whole 180 transition look like? And so that's what we get into in the coaching program. However, for the purposes of this episode, you naming that emotion is the most important. So that you can, at least when you feel that trigger, when you feel that temptation to call them, to reach out to them, to say, I'm sorry first. How many of y'all apologize? Y'all apologize when you haven't done anything wrong, just because you can't tolerate the distance. You can't tolerate that feeling of abandonment. Don't do that. Feel your emotions, feel your sadness, journal about it, talk to someone about it, talk to your therapist about it if you have a therapist. If you're in a coaching program, talk to me about it, talk to the other women about it. You don't have to go through this alone. So yeah, this really was a really short episode. So I hope that was helpful. I hope this helps support anyone who was listening last week and you're like, okay, this relationship has to end. It sounds like that's kind of a consensus that many of you came to, that you had someone almost immediately in mind that it was time for you to put boundaries up with, or you have already put up boundaries with them and you've just been really sad about it. Girl, your sadness, it makes sense. It's okay to feel sad. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're mature. Again, it doesn't mean that it's a sign for you to go back. And it also doesn't mean, the sadness doesn't mean you're going to feel it your whole life. You have made this person your God in a way. You've made this person the only person who had access to giving you happiness, to giving you joy, to giving you contentment. But if you're actually going to look at the reality, the reason why you need to make these boundaries is because that wasn't the case. You're only looking at certain parts of the relationships and hoping that if you magnify them that it'll become the whole truth, but it's never been the whole truth. And so in addition to you owning that sadness, I want you to remind yourself of the good and the bad. In my coaching program, I talk with my ladies about doing that, about honoring the whole truth. And sometimes it's like, no, I just want to look at the bad. The bad is what gives me the motivation to stay away. No, because then when you're super triggered, you want to go and fantasize about the good and act like that was how things were 95% of the time. And that's not the case. So look at the whole picture and see if that is supportive to you. So that's it for this episode. Before I start rambling, I hope that was helpful. If you are ready to sign up for our self-love intensive, which will give you some immediate access to not doing the self-sabotage and looking at the reasons why you may do the things that you do, you can go to blackgirlsheal.org/self-love. And if you're like, okay, just give me this link to this recovery school, I'm ready. Right now the doors are closed. Sorry. But you can join the waitlist to be able to join our winter cohort that is starting in January. And you can get on that waitlist by going to therecoveryschool.com/waitlist. So that's it. I love you all, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Take care of yourselves.